On today's video, we're going to be interviewing Katie about growing up with her autistic sister, Heather.
She had a thing for French fries. And she came down, grabbed the steak, ran upstairs, giggling that she got my steak.
And today, Katie is going to give you her story about growing up with her sister, Heather. Katie, tell me a little bit about Heather, who she was.
We really didn't notice anything different until about 2 years. She progressed normally on range until about 2 years old. And around that time, she started practicing. I remember there's one day she was starting to speak, and she was saying like D words, daddy, and then like all of a sudden she just stopped doing that.
So you were both born in Michigan.
Yes, a little fiery little redhead. She had bozo type hair. We called her Buzzer.
So her nickname was Buzzer.
Buzzy.
Buzzy. When you two girls were little, you being the older sister, how did you guys get along?
At first, when she was first born, I was horrible. And I mean, like, I was in my terrible twos. My mom had to, if my mom had to go to the bathroom, she had to take Heather into the bathroom because I would bite her. Keep me away from her until I figured out, that we started getting along.
Okay. So eventually your sister did die young. How old was she when she passed away?
25.
How advanced was her level of autism?
She never really progressed. They say I think she was extremely intelligent in other ways. She didn't really speak too many full sentences in her life. Like, she would say people's names. She would say my name. She called me KK. Her moods were, you know, just calm, angry, or happy and giggling, and, we started getting along when she started fighting back, because she was just like, she would bite, scream, kick. And that's kind of when I stopped. I was like, what? Probably like, whoa, okay. But I think around 3, when she was a year old, we kind of started getting along.
What were some of the challenges of having a little sister growing up that needed so much help?
The challenge was that you had to watch out for her. And when different people would watch us, babysit us, they wouldn't understand her. So I had to be the one to figure it out. And in some cases, I had to be the adult, and it wasn't always an easy thing.
You, as a child, felt that because of your sister's condition with autism, that you were many times having to play the role of an adult.
Definitely. My parents decided that they were going to move to Florida. My grandparents were already snowbirding down here, so we had come here. And she wanted to be carried because she was afraid of the ice and snow during the winter. So my parents just came down here. And
Okay, so part of the reason your parents came down here was because Heather was afraid to walk in the snow
Yeah.
and the ice.
She had some issues with her feet. It wasn't anything bad, like that inhibited her walking. Her feet were just angled a little bit out. She had a thing for French fries, and I remember my parents, when we would walk into a restaurant with her, they would have to hold her arms down because she'd be like stealing things off people's plates. She saw French fries, she'd steal. Most of the time, everybody just like laughed and cracked up at it. Just this little kid stole French fries off your plate.
So Heather had the likeliness of stealing people's food at restaurants. So when you walk
Yeah.
into her with a restaurant, she would steal people's plates. I remember one time we were in Fort Myers having a family dinner, and I literally remember her swiping an entire steak off somebody's plate.
Mine.
Yeah. No, it was a stranger too, though.
A stranger?
Yes.
Yeah.
We were walking into a restaurant in Fort Myers, and I saw her swipe an entire steak off somebody's plate. So imagine, like, you're just having dinner with your family, normal day, right? Some person walks by and takes a steak off your plate.
Yeah.
I literally seen her do that. So she had, she would walk past and, like, without making eye contact, looking straight ahead, swipe your dinner.
Yeah, she had this like vision where she could see like out of the side of her head. I don't know what it was, but yeah.
And she did steal people's food a lot.
Yes.
In particular, even strangers. So going out to dinner with her was interesting.
Yeah.
Because there was always a potential that she would see somebody's food on somebody's plate and just
Yeah.
take it. Okay. Tell me more on that.
Yeah, she would take food like I remember like right before my dad died, I was cleaning the house because my dad was sick and my mom was in the hospital at that point. And I was cleaning the house and you had brought me food from Applebee's and you got me one of those like little sirloins. And she came down, grabbed the steak, ran upstairs, giggling that she got my steak.
Do you think she got a kick out of stealing people's stuff?
I don't know, but she definitely liked taking my stuff. She could.
Yeah. I think she enjoyed taking people's food. It was like a hobby for her.
I remember, like, one time we were out to dinner with my mom and Heather, and you had gone to the bathroom, and we caught her taking food off your plate.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, she took a lot of people's foods, particularly fries and steaks.
Yeah. She had a thing for McDonald's, especially when she was very little. Her school was in Big Rapids, and we lived in, like, Canadian Lakes, like, 30 minutes away. And I remember every time that we drove into Big Rapids, we had to get McDonald's. If I asked for it, I'd get the "we have food at home" thing. If she saw it with her eyes, and she'd start screaming, so we had to get McDonald's.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think even into adulthood, she wouldn't pass a McDonald's without throwing a fit.
She leveled out after a while.
Even I remember driving past McDonald's with her and her going nuts.
Yeah.
What was her thing to wear there?
French fries.
That's it?
Yeah, she was really into French fries.
Okay, growing up and becoming a teenager, what was her favorite type of music to listen to?
50s.
Okay.
But she also, behind my parents' back, she liked rap music. And this was not the thing that they wanted their little girl to listen to.
Yeah, nobody has an autistic girl and it's like, oh, she, by the
Yeah.
way, listens. What were some of her favorite songs or artists?
She liked Soulja Boy quite a bit.
Which is understandable, I guess.
But she wasn't advanced.
I think it was the you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She wasn't advanced enough that she could search it out herself.
Oh, but you could tell whether she was
Oh,
happy
yeah.
or not while listening to music.
Yeah, there were some times where I was watching the music channel and Lil Wayne came on, and she liked Lil Wayne.
Lil Wayne and Soldier Boy
Yeah,
was her thing.
that
Now,
was not mine.
and her communication was not more than KK. Like she didn't really
More,
fully.
she could ask for more. She could sign a little bit. She could ask to watch Barney. She was very into Barney.
Okay, she liked watching Barney into adulthood.
Yeah.
What? How would you know that she wanted Barney?
She would literally ask for it.
How would she? What would she say? Let me see.
Or Barney. She would say
What
Barney.
does that hand signal mean?
It's sign language for Barney.
Do it again.
Or like that. I don't know which
Dinosaur
way.
maybe.
I don't
That's sign
know.
language for Barney. So she used sign language to communicate when she needed something.
Yeah, or she'd just hand us the tape.
So how much time in a day would she spend watching Barney?
Depends on the day. Usually hours and hours. Like when she was home, she was usually in her room watching Barney.
Okay. So she really enjoyed Barney.
Yes.
I never liked Barney.
It got a little repetitive.
It did. Yeah.
Like I would get ticked off and say, "Hey, you're not watching this one. At least pick another one."
Okay.
Yeah.
So her entertainment was Soldier Boy and Barney.
Yeah. My parents were not thrilled about this, but
Okay. And she liked 50s music.
yes.
Okay. Do you remember one time we took her to a 50s themed dance?
Yes.
Okay.
It was really cool. She was like all happy and dancing, and she would not stop dancing.
Yeah.
And then we took her to
she would dance. She
yeah.
danced. I think we have a video on my Facebook.
Yeah, we took her to Steak and Shake afterward.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that?
Yeah.
And she asked the waitress for another milkshake.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think once me and you became adults and we started doing stuff like taking her out to
Yeah.
the dance or taking her to Steak and Shake or to Applebee's.
I still remember the first time we took her, I think the only time we took her to get Cuban food. And she asked the waitress for a third milkshake, and I had to tell her no.
No, she really liked those Cuban milkshakes.
Yeah. And she ate, she loved food. She literally ate everything off her plate.
Before me and you met, me and your sister were in the same school, possibly even in the same homeroom.
Yeah, I remember one day I had to go to Oak Ridge,
Yeah.
and I picked her up. We were picking her up in the middle of the day because my dad's car broke down in Miami, so we had to go pick him up. And I remember picking her up, and like a lot of kids were coming up and saying, "Bye, Heather. Bye, Heather."
And
It looked like she recognized you the first time.
oh yeah. I mean, she recognized me because most likely she was. I was in the homeroom with all the autistic kids that had Down syndrome.
Yeah.
And we would go. You would go on field trips with your homeroom. And of course, I could never go on field trips because if you're a bad kid, they don't let you go on field trips.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna cry here for a minute. So yes, Heather and I did go to school together, but we had not met. I would have been in her homeroom, and it would have been my job to make sure that the autistic kids, nobody really. The reason they had like us there is to make sure that nobody would harass the autistic kids. So they had a few kind of bad kids in with the autistic kids, and our job was to make sure that nobody would harass them. Because if they didn't have kids like us that were kind of tougher, then they would get picked on. And that was really the problem. And I think I ended up in that situation because there was a kid that was autistic that was getting picked on, and then I kind of beat up the bully, so they put me in that room because they understood that, okay, I was already beating up kids that were picking on, bullies that were picking on kids that were autistic and stuff like that. And I met some of her classmates. You remember the big tall kid that lives out in Naples?
Yeah.
Can't remember his name. I'm tempted to say it was Anthony. Can't remember his name. but he would have been in class with her, and
Yeah.
we used to work for their parents out in the Golden Gate Estates.
Yeah.
So I would have met Heather before I met you.
Hmm.
Eventually, you guys moved to Fort Myers.
Yeah, we lived in Naples for like a year and a half, less than 2 years. About a year and a half. Like, I remember we moved when I was in the middle of seventh grade um, to Naples. And then I finished eighth grade.
So, though, were you in Pine Ridge?
Yeah, I was in Pine Ridge.
So at this time, kids that you knew in Pine Ridge would have gone to school with kids that I knew from Pine Ridge. So at this time, me and you were in the same town. We're kind of in the same group of kids, but we still haven't met.
Yeah.
So Heather's schooling in Fort Myers.
Yeah, Heather went to some elementary school, I think like Orangewood or something, for like a year, for 2 years. When I got into high school, when I was like in my junior year, I ended up in the same school with her. Every year there was Special Olympics. While I was in high school, I never got to go down for it. They wouldn't let me, and my parents were like, I don't know if my parents were involved in that but like I wasn't allowed to go for some reason.
But
And
eventually you did get to go to Special Olympics.
yes, I did get to go after I graduated. So I was only in that school with her for about 2 years.
Special Olympics. So tell me a little bit about what she did at the Special Olympics.
I remember her riding a tricycle, and the Special Olympics gives kids that are disabled a chance to compete together.
So we go to the Special Olympics with Heather. I remember a lot. So they assign like a buddy to her, right?
Yeah, she would get a student buddy.
Which is a normal kid that volunteers to help her.
Yes.
Okay, I remember her running too.
It's,
Other kids.
I don't.
I don't remember the events very well. I do remember being
Yeah.
out. Like I remember being out in the stadium and like.
I remember one year she didn't want to participate too much because she was sleepy.
Yeah.
And she was like in that remember that zombie state she would get into, like where she was just so tired, and she kept wanting to hang around me. She's like, "Let me sleep on you."
I think autistic people in general like competitive natures of stuff. You think like I think she had a blast that day.
I don't think she was very competitive,
Okay.
but I
she
do
did
think
have
she had fun.
She had fun.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. There were some autistic kids that were definitely over the top competitive at that event. I remember that.
Yeah. She was not that unless there was food involved.
So I watched a movie today called The Baytown Outlaws. And it's about these criminals in Alabama who rescue a person that was autistic or disabled. And in the movie, these are criminals. And in the movie, there's a quote that says, "We should ask not why God made people like him or her, but why God made people like us." In other words, sometimes we look at people with disabilities or who have autism or Down syndrome as there's something wrong with them. But in reality, if you get to analyze the personality and characters of people like Heather, you start to realize that they're actually more wholesome than people like us. It's actually the rest of us in society who have a problem.
It really angers me. Like, people will say the things like, "Oh, well, you needed a break. It's good that she's gone." Or, "God needed another angel," or whatever. Like, people will say so many insensitive things and not realize that this was a person in my life. And this is a void in my life. While it may be easier day to day, like with tasks, it's not easy to not have them in your life every day, to not see their smile or hear their laugh, or like not be able to get another hug from them or be around them. Just, it's not easy without them.
One thing that I learned from Heather, and I had never really had close contact with anybody other than Heather that was autistic like that. And one thing that I learned about being around her was after studying her for a while, I realized that it's actually not people like her who have a problem. It's actually the rest of us that have prejudice, that have greed, that have malice in general. Because people like her, they may not be able to speak or they may have their issues and struggles day to day, but there's a level of innocence where they don't have the same level of malice, greed, many of the things that plague us as humans, greed, uh, bad intentions. They're people that are just who they are, the way they are, and they don't have any character flaws about them. If they're also very honest and straightforward, they don't deceive other people. If she wanted to take something from you, she took it. If she wasn't comfortable in a setting, she would scream. I learned from her that actually a lot of people with disabilities are better people than the rest of us in a lot of ways.
She was. Until her last breath, she was better than anyone I met. Um,
She had a great personality. She was fun to be around.
she
And
really was.
like you said, it is difficult for families that have disabled children or siblings. It's a very challenging, and there's horror stories out there as well of people who just can't handle their family members who are autistic. In other words, one of the dark sides of autism is people who cannot handle the stress, the agony that it brings upon your family, because taking care of somebody who is autistic is more than a full-time job. It is.
Not one day of her life was she ever a burden. It didn't matter what she was going on. If she was mad and pulling your hair, she was never a burden.
She was part of your crew. She's your sister, and you two grew up together. You looked out for her. Um, do you remember any good memories with her, like things, little moments and little stuff that are good to you as far as memories?
A lot. There's so much good memories that I have with her. Like, I remember I in the summers I would be home with her sometimes when she wasn't in school, and she she would come out of her room for food when she was home. But if you didn't catch her, I remember one day she walked out of the kitchen with a pie, and then she would come up and give you a hug to pretend like she didn't have the pie.
There might have been some malice there. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. I was like,
Yeah, she definitely. I remember you guys used to have to hide certain foods from her
yeah.
because she would kind of. I guess one of her things was just trying to get food.
She would take food up to her room. Like, she would open the pantry and she would take things out of the pantry. But it was interesting. Like, half the time she'd go into the freezer, take the ice cream, try to take the ice cream upstairs, and we'd be like, no.
Okay, I'll tell you a hilarious story.
Yeah.
There was a night when your parents were sick, and we slept over in Fort Myers. I think we were sleeping on the floor because you were helping your parents that were sick at the time.
Yeah.
And think about the burden. I mean, your father passed away in that same time period. And your mother had some health problems. So you're talking about two people that are having health problems taking care of somebody who's autistic. It was very challenging and difficult for your parents, nonetheless. But your father was a great provider, and he did a really well job to make
Yeah.
sure that you girls always had everything. I mean, I looked at your father almost as my father.
Yeah.
But I will say that one night we were sleeping over because we were helping your parents, and we were sleeping downstairs in the living room. And in the middle of the night, she came down and started yanking on my feet, trying to get me to get her food.
Yeah.
She like yanked on my feet, woke me up, and then started looking. She yanked on my feet and then stared at the kitchen.
Yeah. It was nighttime and she knew she wasn't supposed to have food at night. Yeah. In the middle of the night, she wasn't allowed to come down to get food, but she hadn't come down all day, so she was hungry. Um, if she sensed something going on, then she just wouldn't eat.
I just thought it was hilarious
Yeah.
that she waited until all you guys went to sleep and then woke me up to get her food.
Yeah.
That was hilarious.
Well, you were the closest one to her, so.
Probably, yeah. And well, she probably knew that I've never held back food from her.
Yeah.
I think part of the problem was since she knew that you and mom and dad
Yeah.
always try to keep food from her, but since I was like the new person in the picture, maybe she thought she could test power of me with getting food.
I wouldn't necessarily hold back food. It's just like, no, you're not going to eat the entire tub of ice cream. No, you're not going to eat.
20 cookies, yeah.
You're not going to eat the whole pie that's for dinner. I'll give you a slice, but you're not getting the whole thing. But yeah.
Yeah, I think she tested power with me a lot because she knew that I wasn't
Yeah.
like you guys had all her life. You guys have always been fighting with her, keeping food away from her. So I thought maybe she thought like I was like a weak link and that I would
Yeah.
be able to get her food.
The one thing she didn't like is she didn't like that I had to be the authority figure. She wanted to be in charge. And she was in charge. And I remember like IEPs, like my mom would have to go to the school and figure out what she was doing at school because she didn't want to do it at home.
I remember one of her little antics was eating paper.
Yeah, she had a thing for paper. She always had paper. Like we'd get the catalogs in the mail.
So basically,
Yeah.
I'm sure you also had to be careful with your mail or leaving out any documents because she did have a tendency.
Not necessarily. It was certain like catalog paper.
It was like the material of shiny catalogs.
Mm-hmm.
So one of her antics was eating paper.
She liked feeling them. She didn't necessarily eat it. She liked feeling it.
Crumbling and eating it.
Crumbling it, touching it, making it noise with it.
I remember one time we had to clean out her room and she had, I kid you not, like 2 yards of crumbled paper underneath her bed.
Yeah.
Interesting antics.
And then you'd find like cookie crumbs and like I found a whole entire cookie with like a bite out of it. She didn't like that it had raisins in it, so she just like threw it across the room.
Obviously, she did die. How old was she when she died?
25.
So it's kind of difficult. It's got to be even more difficult for you to talk about this. It's difficult for me to think about it.
Yeah. She had cancer.
Okay. I don't think we should get too much into the details of that. It's just difficult. I mean, I'm sitting here tearing up right now. It's a difficult topic to think about her.
She had cancer. We didn't know that she had cancer. And she, like a month and a half before she died, we took her to the hospital because she had some kind of respiratory issue. Like the doctor kept saying it was allergies. I knew it wasn't allergies. We took her to the emergency room. She had double pneumonia. And while she was in the hospital for the double pneumonia, we found everything else out, and she ended up coming home on hospice.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's difficult. I think we should skip on that too much of the details of that.
Yeah.
So what would you say to somebody who really is unfamiliar with having somebody that's autistic or ever since I met Heather, my appreciation for people with autism and disabilities has really changed.
The thing with autism is that there's different, I don't know what her diagnosis today would be. She was diagnosed, from what I understand, in the 90s, the mid 90s, so that diagnosis would be different today. But she was definitely severely mentally impaired, autistic. Autism can be high functioning or it can be very, very low functioning, which she was. And, you know, to someone who has a sibling with disabilities, get to know them, figure it out. I had to. I wanted to.
Yeah. I mean, we made great memories with her, and the memories we have, like taking her to Steak and Shake or going to that dance with her.
She loved going to the movies. And another thing she loved is popcorn. And when she was a kid, like she'd get the popcorn and we'd have to watch her with the popcorn because she got the bag would be on the floor and then she'd be eating it off the floor. So,
I remember when we went to that dance, like everybody there was like her in some way or another, and it was very neat to see all of them just having a good time. It was like their night out.
yeah,
Very interesting to see that
yeah.
and to be there with her for that. Do you remember the time when we got in the car and I had that sound system?
Or when she got into our truck, yeah, she didn't know what to do with the sound system, but she liked it.
Yeah. We had subwoofers in the car.
Yeah. We had subwoofers. She thought it was awesome. She was like, we let her ride around with windows down. She loved it.
Yeah, we were more cool than the parents.
Oh yeah, we were definitely cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, me and you, we had projects, and like, and you knew eventually it would become too much of a problem for your parents as they got into elderly age to deal with her. So me and you actually had plans for her.
Yeah.
Me and you had plans of the type of activities we were gonna do with her, and we had already started the process of acclimating her to being with us, because we knew eventually, as your parents got older, she would have been our responsibility.
As of today, like if she was still alive today, like all these trips and stuff that we've gone, like, I think she would have really liked Texas and she would have liked California. I wanted to do something like that with her.
I couldn't imagine the trolling comments we already have now. Imagine throwing her into the picture, making her random noises in the background. It would have been
It would have been interesting.
Interesting to say the least. But we had plans of her becoming our responsibility, and
Yeah.
I want you guys to know how committed you were to her. Tell them what you told me when we first met.
At some point, I plan on taking care of her. If that is not something that you would feel comfortable with or understand, then I can't be with you.
Yeah, you told me that when we were 18.
Yeah.
So you at 18 years old meet your future boyfriend, and you told me, hey, Heather's part of my life, and you were so committed to her.
I knew from a very early age that I had to take care of her and that I wanted to take care of her.
Yeah. And I think that's interesting because I was, when I first met you, literally the first day I met you, you told me, hey, my sister has this situation, and if you're serious about me, eventually, she is my responsibility, and I'm not going to neglect that. And I thought about it for a bit, and I told myself, well, that's definitely a very challenging situation. But then I thought even more, and I said, wow, Katie, you are an amazing person, because most people wouldn't take on that responsibility. Most people a lot of people would even run away from that situation. Yet, when I met you, the first thing you told me was about Heather and how she was your responsibility. And if I wanted to be part of your life, you would have to be understanding of that. And when I thought about all that, I realized that while that was a challenging situation, that you were a very loyal person. And it actually, I knew it would be difficult, but I also knew that you were just a special and different type of person, because a lot of people, when they have a person like that in their family, they run away from those responsibilities, or they don't treat that person with the due respect that they deserve. Now, it's very easy for me, who doesn't have that responsibility, to say that. But for a lot of people who are taking care of somebody who's autistic, Down syndrome, or even disabilities in general, it becomes very difficult for the other person to want to stick around.
Yeah.
And I think about like a lot of the people that I meet where like I've literally met people who today have nobody to help them, and their marriage mate ran away from them after they became disabled. Like you see people who they're married for 10, 15 years, one day the other person gets sick, and as soon as the other person gets cancer, gets sick, the marriage mate runs away or something.
Yeah, you have knew that I had to take care of her. There are things within like our childhood that I had to do and take care of that nobody else knows about or nobody's seen. Not even my parents knew or understood at the time. And it can be, it's different. It's challenging, and at some points it's scary. But you have to stand up for the person that you love, and if you really do love them, then you have to do what you have to.
Yeah, I feel like the people that we get in our family, we don't get to pick those people. And there are people who have nobody at all. So if the people that you have imperfections, you just have to be more understanding of those imperfections and accept the people that you have for what they are. And beyond that, you have to actually see the beauty in those people past whatever ailment they may be suffering. And I feel like I learned a lot from Heather. In particular, I just learned the beauty of people who are not interested in your friendship, not interested in what they can get out of you. They are who they are, and that's simply it.
She, I miss her every single day. Every single day. I miss her smile. I miss her laughter. I even miss when she baked my food. I wish she was here taking my food.
All right. Anything else you'd like to say about autism itself, about Heather, about your emotions, about everything?
Well, I miss, I just miss her around. And, it's not like I am not dealing with this every single day. And there is some stuff that I'll probably never get into on the internet that has to do with being a sibling.
Autism itself. What have you learned about autism?
Well, with every person, it's gonna be different. every person that has it is going to have different traits. And those traits, make them special, make them unique. Like she was very into Barney, popcorn, food. These were her interests. She,
So basically, each individual still has interests and personal characteristics of their personality,
yeah,
and you should do the best you can to accommodate those people's interests.
get to know them. You know, I would get tired of Barney and put on Dragon Tales or, whatever kids show was playing. She did not like Arthur. I will say that she did not like Arthur. She thought it was too boring. I could
Yeah.
tell.
Okay, so that's the story of Heather, from listening to Soldier Boy eating popcorn and stealing people's steaks.
Yeah.
Um, Anything else you'd like to say?
Oh yeah, she also liked Eminem.
Eminem. Okay. Do you think you were a bad influence on her with the music?
I was not the one listening to rap music, so
That was her thing.
yeah, I kind of figured that out, like, because we were in the same school for 2 years, and at the assemblies, here I would see my little sister from across the way, like, jamming out to Soldier Boy, whatever rap music was playing at the time. I'm like, oh my gosh, I had to play this at home. Boy, well, my parents, well, Dad wouldn't have cared, but Mom would have been like, oh no, not my little princess. Don't take care of yourself so that you can take care of them better.
Yeah. And that's very important because it is very difficult on the family. One personal characteristic that I have is that I'm always very accommodating to people who have disabilities, needs. And we found ways to do things with Heather that created beautiful memories. And
Here, this picture in particular pretty much says it. Like, it wasn't easy. Like, she's clearly having a meltdown in this picture.